Acceleration training tip number 1, strike the back of the ball of the foot. When you strike your toes, you'll be very soft into the ground. That's sometimes something commonly told to people is to run on your toes. It's going to make you faster. You actually get soft into the ground. If you strike your heel, you're going to be very hard and abrupt into the ground, obviously. But if you strike the back of the ball of the foot, that provides that bouncy, springy contact to send you in the direction you want to go. Acceleration training tip number 2. Dorsiflex your ankle. This kind of goes along with the not running on your toes thing, but when we're trying to accelerate any lift off the ground, we are going to want to drive our toes up to our shins. When we put ourselves in that position, that is the trigger to be able to drive down and back and actually strike in the back of the ball of the foot. So if I'm pointed down, it's near impossible, I think it might even be impossible, to be able to extend this hip and flex your ankle at the same time. So when we lift off, we're just going to want to flex the ankle so that we're in that position to strike the ground down and back. This way we're not limited to our calf strength when we strike the floor. We're not going to leak energy and then push. We're just going to push into the floor. Acceleration training tip number 3, lift the quads. For some high-level sprinters that can get in a really steep acceleration position, sweeping the foot along the floor can actually help them get faster. But for most high school athletes, creating more separation and ability to put force into the ground is going to help them get faster. The easiest way to figure that out is to test it, see what's faster for your athletes. But I would say 9 times out of 10, your regular high school athletes are going to benefit more from being able to lift their quads, having the heel follow the hamstring. So it's almost like if there was a little string attached to my hamstring, when I lift my quad up, the heel's gonna follow. And getting that separation between my legs provides that distance so I can put force into the ground. If I'm really low to the ground, what ends up happening is a shuffling type action or a quickness type action. It might feel faster to the athlete, but in reality, they're actually not putting a whole lot of force into the ground. The higher the leg drive, the more force that gets pushed down and back into the ground. Acceleration training tip number 4, aggressive forward lean. When you think about the last tip as far as bringing our quads up, if I'm standing straight up, if I push down, it's gonna send me up. So the most important part of being able to accelerate in the direction I wanna go is to be able to push the ground down and back behind me. So we're lifting our quads, we're pushing the floor behind us, but what we commonly see with high school athletes is that shuffling type action or even accelerating out and stepping in front. I'm putting on the brakes here. My foot's in front of my hips, I'm actually slowing down, and then I have to use a whole lot of energy to re-accelerate in the next step. Where in those first 2 or 3 strides, I want it more of a push, push, push back and down behind the athlete. And the key concept to focus on with different levels of athletes, because everybody's going to have different heights, different leg lengths, different strength, different power, different speed of cadence of leg action. There's a lot of variables to play around with this, and the only way to know how much someone should lean is to test it. Get them to the point where they're leaning further and further and further to the point where they almost fall over. That's when you know, all right, we'll taper back a little bit. That's as aggressive as that person can lean at this current moment. Increase your strength, increase your cadence, increase your power, and maybe you could get a little bit more aggressive. Acceleration training tip number 5, aggressive arm action. For high levels of track and field, there is a little bit more of an opening up, but for most athletes, especially at the high school level, keeping the elbows at 90 degrees is probably going to be a good starting point. With a good aggressive action, you're probably going to have a little bit of opening anyway. So keys to think about, making sure that you're driving the elbows back, moving from the shoulder, not from the elbow, right? We're not beating a drum, we are driving the elbows behind us and trying to run with our entire body. So when we're in that aggressive lean, I want to see that the arms are actually driving your leg cadence. You can't move your legs faster than your arms, but you can use your arms to speed up your legs. So a good aggressive fast arm action from eye socket to hip pocket. We're never going to reach past our eyes. This is all wasted motion. So that good eye socket to hip pocket action is actually going to help speed up the legs below us. Acceleration training tip number 6. Use relaxed aggression. Most of the high school athletes that I work with, especially football players, have this tendency to kind of clench up and try really hard when they're sprinting. And what ends up happening is you're just tensing up your whole body, where sprinting needs to be a little bit more about rhythm, about controlled aggression, bursts of power, but also turning things off quickly so that you can move. When you tighten things up and try to run, you can't really move your arms and your legs very fast. So trying harder will actually sometimes slow you down. It usually slows people down. When we get people to try to relax, have a little bit of bounce, have a little bit of rhythm, that tends to give them a little more coordination and the ability to, when we relax, put those good strong bursts into the ground when they're needed. The difference between high-level athletes, the elite people in sport, it's usually not strength, it's maybe a little bit of power, but it's a lot of this ability to turn things off quicker than most people. So it's, can you burst and then turn it off so that you can burst again? Acceleration training tip number 7, use skipping drills. Skipping drills are movement-specific plyometrics for sprinting and acceleration. So we'll start with things like we talked about earlier in ankling, to being able to have a little bit of bounce and rhythm, to then having more of a plyo response where we leave the ground, to then an actual A-skip where we're trying to get leg separation, to then isolating one leg in a single leg skip or straight leg skip. These are all ways that we can help improve coordination, athleticism, especially for those younger athletes going through growth spurts. It's a real good way to help control the speed development on the back end. Acceleration training tip number 8. Use resistance wisely. A lot of times when I see people using resisted exercise, whether that be a sled or a parachute or a resistance band with another individual holding on to the back of that, is usually they're just making that exercise harder for the person. And what ends up happening is it becomes a strength exercise, and maybe even a strength exercise that's not done all that well. So the form starts to break down. And that's fine if you're looking for conditioning, but I'd much rather utilize the resistance to put the person in a position so that they can feel the forward lean and feel the contact of the foot with the ground, to feel how high they can lift their legs up in that position. So this is more of a wall drill example, but if I'm here leaning, I could lift my legs up and march with either that band behind me or even pushing a sled. It's even better than the wall drill because now I'm moving across the floor. The sled or this position probably wouldn't work so much for skipping, but with the resistance band, if I have a partner that really knows the amount of resistance I need to put me in that position, I could work on some of those skipping progressions in that forward lean. I could also do some high knee type sprints, things that are not breaking down the form and technique of the run, but just adding that little bit of resistance so the client can feel the forward lean.